Guys. I actually don't know if you can see me with this, but hopefully hearing me will help. Um, I wanted to continue with Fahrenheit 451. Um, I'm going to continue with where you need to pick up your reading for this week. But before I get into it, I wanted to draw your attention to the conversation that Montag has with Beatty, with his boss, um, just because there's two important aspects. The captain turns out to play a very important role later in the story, so, foreshadowing. Um, and the key thing that Beatty asks is right here where he asks, do you have a guilty conscience about something? And it's the second time that something has been alluded to where Beatty in the previous section already has indicated that maybe there's something hidden in his house. Maybe there's something he's not totally comfortable with. And it's also interesting, this beast, this, killing machine, most people treat as a creature for sport. And Montag actually starts to feel guilty about or uncomfortable about, not just because that it seems to be trying to hunt him, but also because it seems almost a waste. And it really is another, Bradbury's using Beatty to comment on the idea that, if we are a product of our environment and all our environment gives us is negative, right, or harmful things, hunting and finding and killing, then that is all, right, any individual, whether it's a robot or a human, may ever know. And that's another reason why Clarice, of course, stands out so much. So we're going to pick up with these three dots at the top. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days, and as many times he came out of the house and Clarice was somewhere in the world. Once he saw her shaking a walnut tree. Once he saw her sitting on the lawn knitting a blue sweater. 3 or 4 times he found a bouquet of late flowers on his porch, or a handful of chestnuts in a little sack, or some autumn leaves neatly pinned to a sheet of white paper and thumbtacked to his door. Every day Clarice walked him to the corner. One day it was raining, the next it was clear, and the day after that the wind blew strong. The day after that it was mild and calm. The day after the calm day was a day like a furnace of summer, and Clarice with her face all sunburnt by late afternoon. Why is it, he said one time at the subway entrance, I feel like I've known you so many years? Because I like you, she said, and I don't want anything from you, and because we know each other. You make me feel very old and very much like a father. Now you explain, she said, why you haven't any daughters like me if you love children so much. I don't know. You're joking. I mean, he stopped and shook his head. Well, my wife, she just never wanted any children at all. The girl stopped smiling. I'm sorry. I really thought you were having fun at my expense. I'm a fool. No, he said. It was a good question. It's been a long time since anyone cared enough to ask a good question. Let's talk about something else. Have you ever smelled old leaves? Don't they smell like cinnamon? Here, smell. Oh, yes, it is like cinnamon in a way. She looked at him with her clear dark eyes. You always seem shocked. It's just I haven't had time. Did you look at the stretched out billboards like I told you? I think so. Yes, he had to laugh. Your laugh sounds much nicer than it did. Does it? Much more relaxed. He felt at ease and comfortable. Why are you in school? I see you every day wandering around. Oh, they don't miss me, she said. I'm antisocial, they say. I don't mix. It's so strange. I'm very social indeed. It all depends on what you mean by social, doesn't it? Social to me means talking to you about things like this. She rattled some chestnuts that had fallen off the tree in the front yard. I'm talking about how strange the world is. Being with people is nice, but I don't think it's social to get a bunch of people together and not let them talk, do you? an hour of TV class, an hour of basketball or baseball or running, another hour of transcription history or painting pictures or more sports. But we never ask questions, or at least most don't. They just run answers at you. Bing, 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 and us sitting there for 4 more hours of film teacher. That's not social to me at all. It's a lot of funnels and a lot of water poured down the spout and out the bottom, and then telling us it's wine when it's not. They run us so ragged by the end of the day we can't do anything but go to bed or head for a fun park to bully people around, break window panes in the window smasher place, or wreck cars in the car wrecker place with a big steel ball. Or go out in the cars and race on the streets, trying to see how close you can get to lampposts, playing chicken and knock hubcaps. I guess I'm everything they say I am, all right. I haven't any friends. That's supposed to prove I'm abnormal. But everyone I know is either shouting or dancing around like wild or beating up one another. Do you notice how people hurt each other nowadays? You sound so very old. Sometimes I'm ancient. I'm afraid of children my own age. They kill each other. Did it always used to be that way? My uncle says no. 6 of my friends have been shot in the last year alone. 10 of them died in car wrecks. I'm afraid of them, and they don't like me because I'm afraid. My uncle says his grandfather remembered when children didn't kill each other. That was a long time ago when they had things different. They believed in responsibility, my uncle says. Do you know I'm responsible? I was spanked when I needed it years ago, and I do all the shopping and house cleaning by hand. But most of all, she said, I like to watch people. Sometimes I ride the subway all day and look at them and listen to them. I just want to figure out who they are and what they want and where they're going. Sometimes I even go to the fun parks and ride in the jet cars when they race on the edge of town at midnight and the police don't care as long as they're insured. As long as everyone has 10,000 insurance, everyone's happy. Sometimes I sneak around and listen in subways. Or I listen at soda fountains. And do you know what? What? People don't talk about anything. Oh, they must. No, not anything. They name a lot of cars or clothes or swimming pools mostly and say, how swell. But they all say the same things, and nobody says anything different from anybody else. And most of the time in the cafes, they have the joke boxes on and the same jokes most of the time, or the musical wall lit and all the colored patterns running up and down, but it's only color and all abstract. And at the museums, have you ever been? All abstract. That's all there is now. My uncle says it was different once. A long time back, sometimes people said things or even showed people. Your uncle said, your uncle said, your uncle must be a remarkable man. He is. He certainly is. Well, I gotta be going. Goodbye, Mr. Montag. Goodbye. Goodbye. Before we continue, it's just an interesting reminder when you think about when Montag was talking to his wife, right? Think about her ideal situation, how she wants their house decorated with 4 screens, and she wakes up with and immediately plugs the seashells in her ears and interacts with the virtual people and even the show that Mildred wants to act in. When Montag asks her what it's about, she can't even tell you, right? So it's kind of another commentary, right? If people are just constantly doing, what's the ulterior motive there? What is lost when people suddenly focus just on, right, action and don't stop taking the time to think? And what are some of the really drastic consequences of that, both self-destructive and destructive towards others? Going on to our next section. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days. The firehouse. Montag, you shin that pole like a bird up a tree. 3rd day. Montag, I see you come in the back door this time. The hound bother you? No. 4th day. Montag, a funny thing. Heard tell this morning. Fireman in Seattle purposely set a mechanical hound to his own chemical complex and let it loose. What kind of suicide would you call that? 5, 6, 7 days. And then Clarice was gone. He didn't know what there was about the afternoon, but it was not seeing her somewhere in the world. The lawn was empty, the trees empty, the street empty. And while at first he didn't even know he missed her or was even looking for her, the fact was that by the time he reached the subway, there were vague stirrings of disease in him. Something was the matter. His routine had been disturbed. A simple routine, true, established in a few days, and yet he almost turned back to make the walk again, to get her to appear again. He was certain if he tried the same route, everything would work out fine, but it was late, and the arrival of his train put a stop to his plan. The flutter of cards, motion of hands, of eyelids, the drone of the time voice in the firehouse ceiling. 1:35 Thursday morning, November 4th. 1:36, 1:37 a.m. The tick of the playing cards on the greasy tabletop, all the sounds came to Montag behind his closed eyes, behind the barrier he had momentarily erected. He could feel the firehouse full of glitter and shine and silence, of brass colors, the colors of coins, of gold, of silver. The unseen men across the table were signed on their cards, waiting. 1:45. The voice clock mourned out the cold hour of a cold morning on a still colder year. What's wrong, Montag? Montag opened his eyes. The radio hummed somewhere. War may be declared any hour. The country stands ready to defend its. Firehouse trembled as a great flight of jet planes whistled a single note across the black morning sky. Montag blinked. Beatty was looking at him as if he were a museum statue. At any moment, Beatty might rise and walk about him, touching, exploring his guilt and self-consciousness. Guilt? What guilt was that? Your play, Montag. Montag looked at these men whose faces were sunburned by 1,000 real and 10,000 imaginary fires, whose work flushed their cheeks and fevered their eyes, these men who looked steadily into their platinum igniter flames as they lit their eternally burning black pipes. They and their charcoal hair and soot-colored brows and their bluish ash-smeared cheeks where they had shaven close, but their heritage showed. Montag started up, his mouth opened. Had he ever seen a fireman that didn't have black hair, black brows, a fiery face, and a blue steel shaved but unshaved look? These men were all mirror images of himself. Were all firemen picked them for their looks as well as their proclivities? The color of cinders and ash about them and the continual smell of burning from their pipes? Captain Beatty there, rising in thunderheads of tobacco smoke. Beatty opening a fresh tobacco packet, crumpling the cellophane into a sound of fire. Montag looked at the cards in his hands. I've been thinking about the fire last week, but the man whose library we fixed, what happened to him? They took him screaming off to the asylum. He wasn't insane. Beatty arranged his cards quietly. Any man's insane who thinks he can fool the government and us. I tried to imagine, said Montag, just how would it feel? I mean, to have firemen burn our houses and our books. We haven't any books. But if we had some. You got some? Beatty blinked slowly. No. Montag gazed beyond them to the wall and the typed lists of 1,000,000 forbidden books, their names leaping into the fire, burning down the years under his axe and his hose which sprayed not water but kerosene. No. In his mind, a cool wind started up and blew out the ventilator grill at home, softly, chilling his face. And again he saw himself in a green park talking to an old man, a very old man, and the wind from the park was cold too. Montag hesitated. What, was it always like this? The firehouse, our work? I mean, once upon a time, Beatty said. What kind of talk is that? Fool, thought Montag to himself, you'll give it away. The Last Fire, a book of fairy tales, he glanced at a single line. I mean, he said, in the old days, before homes were completely fireproofed. Suddenly it seemed a much younger voice was speaking for him. He opened his mouth and it was Clarice McClellan saying, didn't firemen prevent fires rather than stoking them up and get them going? That's rich. Stonemen in black drew forth their rule books, which also contained brief histories of the firemen of America, and laid them out where Montag, though long familiar with them, might read. Established, 1790, to burn English-influenced books in the colonies. First fireman, Benjamin Franklin. And Rule 1, answer the alarm quickly. 2, start the fire swiftly. 3, burn everything. 4, report back to firehouse immediately. 5, stand alert for other alarms. Everyone watched Montag. He did not move. The alarm sounded. The bell on the ceiling kicked itself 200 times. Suddenly, there were 4 empty chairs. The cards fell in a flurry of snow. The brass poles shivered. The men were gone. Montag sat in his chair below the orange dragon coughed to life. Montag slid down the pole like a man in a dream. The mechanical hound leapt up in its kennel, its eyes all green flame. Montag, you forgot your helmet! He seized it off the wall behind him, ran, leapt, and they were off, the night wind hammering about their siren scream and their mighty metal thunder. It was a flaking 3-story house in an ancient part of the city, a century old if it was a day, but like all houses, it had been given a thin, fireproof plastic sheath many years ago, and this preservative shell seemed to be the only thing holding it in the sky. Here we are. The engine slammed to a stop. Beatty, Stoneman, and Black ran up the sidewalk, suddenly odious and fat in their plump, fireproof slickers. Montag followed. They crashed the front door and grabbed at a woman, though she was not running. She was not trying to escape. She was only standing, weaving from side to side, her eyes fixed upon a nothingness in the wall, as if they had struck her a terrible blow upon the head. Her tongue was moving in her mouth, and her eyes seemed to be trying to remember something, and then they remembered, and her tongue moved again. Lay the man, Master Ridley, we shall this day light such a candle by God's grace in England as I trust shall never be put out. Enough of that, said Beatty. Where are they? He slapped her face with amazing objectivity and repeated the question. The old woman's eyes came to focus upon Beatty. You know where they are, or you wouldn't be here, she said. Stoneman held out the telephone alarm card with the complaint signed in telephone duplicate on the back. Have reason to suspect attic, 11 North Elm City, EB. That would be Miss Blake, my neighbor, said the woman reading the initials. All right, man, let's get 'em. Next thing, they were up in musty blackness, swinging silver hatchets at doors that were, after all, unlocked, tumbling through like boys all rollick and shout, Hey! A fountain of books sprang down upon Montag as he climbed, shuddering up the sheer stairwell. How inconvenient. Always before, it had been like snuffing a candle. The police went first and adhesive taped the victim's mouth and bandaged him off in their glittering beetle cars. So when you arrived, you found an empty house. You weren't hurting anyone. You were only hurting things. And since things couldn't really be hurt, since things felt nothing and things don't scream or whimper as this woman might begin to scream and cry out, there was nothing to tease your conscience later. You were simply cleaning up. Janitorial work, essentially. Everything to its proper place. Quick with the kerosene, who's got a match? But now, tonight, something had slipped. This woman was spoiling the ritual. The men were making too much noise, laughing, joking, to cover her terrible, accusing silence below. She made the empty rooms roar with accusation and shake down a fine dust of guilt that sucked in their nostrils as they plunged about. It's neither cricket, which means sport, nor correct. Montag felt an immense irritation. He shouldn't be here on top of everything. Books bombarded his shoulders, his arms, his upturned face. A book lit almost obediently, like a white pigeon in his hands, wings fluttering. In the dim, wavering light, a page hung open. It was like a snowy feather, the words delicately painted thereon. In all the rush and fervor, Montag had only an instant to read a line, but it blazed in his mind for the next minute as if stamped there with a fiery steel. Time has fallen asleep in the afternoon sunshine. He dropped the book. Immediately another fell in his arms. Montag, up here! Montag's hand closed like a mouth, crushed the book with wild devotion, with insanity of mindlessness to his chest. The men above were hurling shovelfuls of magazines into the dusty air. They fell like slaughtered birds, and the woman stood below like a small girl among the bodies. Montag had done nothing. His hand had done it all. His hand, with a brain of its own, with a conscience and curiosity in each trembling finger, had turned thief. Now it plunged the book back under his arm, plunged it tight to the sweating armpit, rushed out empty with a magician's flourish. Look here, innocent, look! He gazed, shaken at that white hand. He held it way out as if he were farsighted. He held it close as if he were blind. Montag! He jerked about. Don't stand there, idiot! The books lay like giant mounds of fish left to dry. The men danced and slipped and fell over them. Titles glittered, their golden eyes falling, gone. They pumped kerosene. They pumped the cold fluid from the numeral 451 tank strapped to their shoulders. They coated each book. They pumped rooms full of it. They hurried downstairs, Montag staggering after them in the kerosene fumes. Come here, woman! The woman knelt among the books, touching the drenched leather and cardboard, reading the gilt titles with her fingers while her eyes accused Montag. You can't ever have my books, she said. You know the law, said Beatty. Where's your common sense? None of these books agree with each other. You've been locked up here for years with a regular damn Tower of Babel. Snap out of it. The people in those books never lived. Come on now. She shook her head. The whole house is going up, said Beatty. The men walked clumsily to the door. They glanced at Montag, who stood near the woman. You're not leaving her here, he protested. She won't come. Force her then. Beatty raised his hand, which was concealed the igniter. We're due back at the house. Besides, these fanatics always try suicide. The pattern's familiar. Montag placed his hand on the woman's elbow. You can come with me. No, she said. Thank you anyway. I'm counting to 10, said Beatty. 1, 2. Please, said Montag. Go on, said the woman. 3, 4. Here, Montag pulled at the woman. The woman replied quietly, I want to stay here. 5, 6. You can stop counting, she said. She opened the fingers of one hand slightly. In the palm of the hand was a silver, slender object, an ordinary kitchen match. The sight of it rushed the men out and down away from the house. Captain Beatty, keeping his dignity, backed slowly through the front door, his pig face burnt and shiny from 1,000 fires and night excitements. God, thought Montag, how true. Always at night the alarm comes, never by day. Is it because fire is prettier by night? More spectacle? A better show? The pink face of Beatty now showed the faintest panic in the door. The woman's hand twitched on the single matchstick. The fumes of kerosene bloomed up about her. Montag felt the hidden book pound like a heart against his chest. Go on, said the woman. And Montag felt himself back away and out the door after Beatty, down the steps, across the lawn, where the path of kerosene lay like the track of some evil snail. On the front porch where she had come to weigh them quietly with her eyes, her quietness a condemnation, the woman stood motionless. Beatty flicked his fingers to spark the kerosene. He was too late, Montag gasped. The woman on the porch reached out with contempt to them all and struck the kitchen match against the railing. People ran out the houses all down the street. All right, I'm going to stop there. Just 2 parting thoughts. First, I noticed that Clarice is absent for all of this, and we're sort of left to see the reverberations, the impact that her interactions with Montag has had on him and has had on the way he does his job. And then, of course, we see the interaction with the old woman and is it brave or is it crazy for her to be willing to die with her books? And is it a life worth living, right, in a world where people are, willing to like burn knowledge to destroy, history? And the final thing, symbolically speaking, that single match. Think about, of course, in the context of this story, right? That woman holding that one match, right, is enough to send all the firemen fleeing because one match can start a huge fire. But think again, right? If you use that analogy of a match, a single thing, a single simple thing, how does that, both in this story and in life in general, how does that begin to change our minds and ultimately to change the world?